The answer would come soon. The deadline arrived at exactly midnight Vrex's Prime Standard Time. Every being in the Dominion who could access a screen was watching. The tension was unbearable. Overlord Thrinix sat in his command center, surrounded by advisors who looked like they had aged years in the past few days. Thrinix had made his decision. The Dominion would not surrender. They would meet their end with defiance, showing the galaxy that they bowed to no one. As the final seconds counted down, space itself seemed to tear open. The human fleet that had been waiting patiently around Vrex's Prime suddenly multiplied. Ships appeared by the thousands, then tens of thousands. They filled every orbital path, every approach vector surrounding the planet in a sphere of vessels that blocked out the stars. But these were different from the ships that had arrived before. Where the science vessels had been elegant and graceful, these new arrivals were built for war. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered in weapons that defied understanding. Some ships crackled with energy that bent light around them. Others seemed to exist in multiple places at once, flickering between reality and something else. Captain Sung Jin stood on the bridge of his partially repaired cruiser and felt his hope die. If the science vessels had been impressive, these warships were terrifying. He counted over 50,000 ships and more were still appearing. "This is the human military," he said quietly. "We never stood a chance." One ship stood out above all others. It was enormous, easily the size of a moon, but it moved with impossible grace. The vessel was shaped like a blade, all smooth curves and sharp edges. At its heart, visible through the hull, burned what looked like a captured star. The power radiating from it made sensors scream in protest. This was a flagship. This was where the real decisions would be made. Admiral Yul Choi's face appeared on every screen across the Dominion. But he was not alone. Beside him stood another figure, a woman whose presence commanded immediate respect. "I am Admiral Sora Min," the woman said, "commander of the Terran Imperium Diplomatic Corps. Your deadline has passed. The Kryvax Dominion is now under human authority. You will stand down immediately, or we will remove you from power by force." In the command center, Overlord Threnix stood. His massive form trembled with rage and fear. "I will not surrender. You will have to kill me first." "If that is what you wish," Sora replied. "But understand this. We can remove you and leave every other being in the Dominion alive. We don't need to destroy planets or kill billions to win this war. We only need to target you." Threnix laughed bitterly. "I am surrounded by shields and guards. I am on the most heavily defended planet in the Dominion." "You cannot touch me," Sora smiled. It was not a cruel smile, just sad. "Your coordinates are 45.2187 north, 83.4451 west. You are standing in Command Center 7, level 154 of the primary defense complex. There are 47 guards in the building. You have a weapon in your right side drawer, second compartment. Would you like me to tell you what you had for breakfast?" The blood drained from Threnix's face. Those details were classified. His exact location was supposed to be a state secret. How could they possibly know? "We have been inside your network since the moment we arrived," Sora explained. "We know everything. Every secret, every plan, every hidden weapon. Your computer systems are 8,000 years behind ours. Breaking them was simpler than a child's puzzle." Around the room, Threnix's advisors began to back away. The fight had gone out of them. "They were defeated and everyone knew it. What do you want?" Threnix asked, his voice hollow. "We want you to surrender. Right now. Publicly. Order all Dominion forces to stand down. Then we will talk about what comes next." For a long moment, Threnix stood silent. Then slowly his shoulders sagged. He was beaten, and continuing would only bring death to billions of innocent beings. "I surrender," he said. "The Dominion surrenders." The words went out across the galaxy. In millions of locations, Dominion forces laid down their weapons. Ships powered down. Soldiers returned to barracks. 8,000 years of Dominion rule ended, not with a battle, but with 6 words. Within an hour, transport ships arrived to collect the Dominion leadership. They were not arrested or imprisoned. Instead, they were invited aboard the human flagship for negotiations. Yuna Kang was allowed to come as a human descendant and expert on both cultures. Captain Sung Jin was brought as a military representative. Colonel Wu Tae joined as an intelligence officer. Together with a dozen other Dominion leaders, they were transported to the massive human vessel. What they saw inside broke something fundamental in their understanding of the universe. The ship's interior was vast beyond comprehension. Corridors stretched farther than should be physically possible, given the exterior dimensions. Gardens grew in rooms where gravity pointed in multiple directions. They passed a window that showed not space but another galaxy entirely, as if it was a view into a different location in the universe. The crew members they saw were beyond description. Some looked human, but others had modified themselves with technology and biology in ways that blurred the line between organic and artificial. One engineer they passed had skin that flickered with circuitry patterns. Another crew member seemed to exist as a field of energy contained in a humanoid shape. They were brought to a conference room that defied physics. The room was circular but somehow had no walls. Stars rotated around them, providing light without any visible source. Chairs rose from the floor, perfectly shaped for each species present. Admirals Yul Choi and Sora Min entered, followed by a dozen other human officers and civilians. Behind them came Commander Han Dae, finally free from his cell. He looked older than he had before, burdened by everything that had happened. Sora gestured for everyone to sit. Let us begin with honesty. You want to know what happened to humanity? We will tell you. Over the next hour, the Dominion leaders learned the truth. 8,000 years ago, humanity had been scattered and broken. Other species dominated the galaxy, and humans were seen as weak, primitive, and worthless. Rather than continue fighting a losing battle, human leaders made a desperate choice. They gathered every human they could find, 3 billion souls, and launched a one-way journey beyond the galactic rim. They fled into the void between galaxies, into dark space where nothing existed and survival was impossible by any known measure. Many thought it was suicide. But humans had one advantage. They were good at surviving impossible situations. In the void, humanity was forced to innovate or die. They learned to create matter from quantum foam. They built habitats around artificial stars. They merged with technology, transcending the limitations of biology. They discovered how to fold space, manipulate time, and exist in dimensions beyond the normal three. But technology was not their greatest achievement. Their philosophy evolved. Humans had always been tribal, always fighting among themselves. In the void, separated from all other life, they had to learn cooperation or perish. They built a society based not on conquest, but on mutual support. We could have become like you, Sora explained to the assembled Dominion leaders. We had the power. We could have returned and enslaved every species in this galaxy. But we chose differently. We chose to be better than our worst impulses. Then why did you never make contact? Overlord Threnix asked. Why hide for 8,000 years? Because we were not ready. We needed to be sure we had truly changed. We needed to know we would not become the monsters we fled from. So we watched. We placed observers throughout the galaxy. We studied how civilizations rose and fell. And we waited. What changed? Colonel Wu Te asked. Why reveal yourselves now? Yul gestured to Han Dae. Because you found one of our sleeping soldiers. And you mocked him. You humiliated him. You threatened to dissect him. That told us everything we needed to know about the Dominion. You had not changed. You were still bullies, still cruel to those you saw as weak. So you came to conquer us, Threnix said bitterly. No, Sora replied firmly. We came to free you. Overlord Threnix stared at the image of the human ship on his command center displays. Around him, military advisors and council members argued about the proper response. Some urged caution. Others demanded immediate attack. The Dominion had never backed down from a threat before. How many ships do we have in this system? Threnix asked. 3,000 warships, Overlord, the military coordinator replied, plus defense platforms, orbital weapons, and planetary shields. This is the most heavily defended system in the Dominion. Threnix nodded. And they send one ship? Either they are fools or they are very confident. Let us discover which. He opened a channel to the human vessel. This is Overlord Threnix of the Kryvax Dominion. You will leave our space immediately or we will destroy you. The response came instantly. You have 48 hours to release Han Dae. This is your final warning. We do not respond to threats. You have 10 seconds to turn your ship around or we will open fire. Then fire. The channel closed. Threnix looked around the room. Every eye was on him, waiting for his decision. To back down now would show weakness. The Dominion's reputation was built on strength and certainty. Destroy that ship, Threnix ordered. The order rippled through the Dominion fleet. 3,000 warships moved into attack positions. Weapon systems came online, charging with enough power to shatter planets. Targeting computers locked onto the single human vessel floating alone in the darkness. Captain Sung Jin watched from the bridge of his cruiser as the attack began. The space around the human ship erupted in fire and fury. Plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, particle beams, and gravity weapons all converged on one target. The combined firepower of 3,000 warships created a storm of destruction that lit up space like a new sun. The barrage continued for 2 full minutes. When the weapons finally stopped firing, the space where the human ship had been was filled with cooling plasma and dissipating energy. Surely nothing could have survived that. Visual scan, the cruiser captain ordered. The view screen cleared as the energy dispersed. There, floating exactly where it had been before, was the human ship, undamaged, not even a scratch on its hull. Impossible, someone whispered. On the command deck, sensors frantically checked and rechecked their readings. The ship hadn't activated any visible shields. It hadn't moved or dodged. The attacks had simply failed. Every weapon, every destructive force the Dominion could bring to bear had been useless. Then the human ship responded. A pulse of blue-white energy rippled out from the vessel. It spread in all directions like a wave on an ocean. The pulse moved slowly enough that everyone could watch it coming. Ship captains ordered emergency maneuvers, but the wave was too large to avoid. The pulse passed through the Dominion fleet like a ghost through walls, and where it touched, ships died. Not destroyed, not damaged, just stopped working. Engines shut down. Weapons went offline. Life support systems flickered and failed. Communications went dark. 3,000 warships became 3,000 floating tombs in the space of seconds. Captain Sung Jin felt his ship die around him. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power failed. The bridge crew frantically tried to restart systems, but nothing responded. "We're dead in space," the engineering officer reported. "Everything is offline. It's like the ship forgot how to work." Through the viewport, Sung Jin could see other ships drifting helplessly. Some had running lights still flickering. Others were completely dark. The entire Dominion fleet had been neutralized in one attack, and not a single hull had been breached. Every crew was alive, trapped in ships that no longer functioned. The human ship broadcast again. "That was a warning. We don't want to kill you, but we will if you force our hand. You have 47 hours to release Han Day." Then space began to shimmer. More ships appeared, 10 at first, then 100, then 1,000. They materialized without any hyperspace signature, without any energy spike, without any warning. They simply came into existence as if they had always been there and reality was only now noticing. Each ship was different. Some were massive, larger than anything the Dominion had ever built. Others were small, barely larger than a fighter craft. Some had hulls that seemed to be built around captured stars, glowing with contained nuclear fire. Others appeared to phase in and out of reality, existing in multiple dimensions at once. One ship caught Sung Jin's attention. It was small, no larger than a corvette, but his ship's failing sensors showed something impossible. The small vessel registered as having the mass of a planet. It was as if they had compressed an entire world into a ship-sized package. "What are they?" the cruiser captain whispered. "The future," Sung Jin replied. Across the Dominion, panic set in. Reports flooded in from every border system. Human ships were appearing everywhere. Not attacking, just appearing. Watching. Waiting. The number grew by the hour. By the end of the first day, the Dominion had counted over 10,000 human vessels scattered across their territory. None of them attacked. They just watched. In the High Council chamber, the mood had shifted from arrogance to fear. Military advisors presented options, but none of them were good. The Dominion's weapons didn't work against human technology. Their ships couldn't move once the humans disabled them. They were helpless. "We must surrender," one council member said. Several others agreed. The alternative was too horrible to consider. But Overlord Threnix refused. "If we bow to this threat, we show weakness. Other species will see that the Dominion can be intimidated. Our empire will fall apart. If we don't surrender, they might destroy us all," another member argued. Yuna Kang managed to get access to Day during the chaos. She found him in his cell, watching news broadcasts of the human fleet's arrival. He looked sad rather than triumphant. Are they going to kill everyone? Yuna asked. Day shook his head. They don't want to. That's why they disabled your fleet instead of destroying it. That's why they're waiting instead of attacking. They're giving you a choice. What choice? Surrender or die? No, change or stay the same. The Dominion is built on conquest and domination. You enslave weaker species. You mock and humiliate those you consider inferior. My people left 8,000 years ago to escape empires like yours. Now we have to decide if we come back as the same kind of empire, or as something better. You want to replace the Dominion? We want to give every species the chance to be free, including yours. Hana Lim, working frantically in the communications center, made another disturbing discovery. She had been analyzing the human ships and their movements. What she found made her blood run cold. They're not warships, she reported to Colonel Wu Te. Most of them are science vessels, exploration ships. The readings show laboratories, research facilities, observation equipment. These aren't military vessels at all. Wu Te felt his world turn upside down. If these aren't military ships, then where is their actual military? I don't know. I think we're looking at their civilian fleet. The implications were staggering. If these incredibly advanced vessels were just science ships, what could their actual military do? What weapons did they possess that made these reality-bending technologies look peaceful by comparison? On the second day, Admiral Yul Choi contacted the Dominion leadership directly. His face appeared on every screen across their territory. He looked human, but there was something different about him. His eyes held depths that suggested he had lived far longer than any human should. We have waited 2 days for you to make the right choice, Yul said. We will wait one more. After that, we will make the choice for you. You cannot threaten us, Threnix replied, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. I am not threatening you. I am informing you. The Dominion will end in 24 hours. What replaces it is up to you. You can end it peacefully and help build something better, or you can resist and we will end it for you. The outcome is the same either way. The broadcast ended. Across the Dominion, the reality of the situation finally sank in. They had lost. The war was over before it even started. Humanity had returned after 8,000 years, and they were so far beyond the Dominion that resistance was meaningless. Arguments raged through the night. Some wanted to fight to the end, dying with honor rather than surrendering. Others argued for survival at any cost. Still others suggested activating doomsday weapons, destroying everything out of spite if they were going to lose anyway. Captain Sung Jin and his crew worked to restore power to their ship. Emergency repairs brought some systems back online. When communications were restored, he contacted Yuna. We need to convince them to surrender, Sung Jin said. If the Dominion leadership refuses, millions will die. I know. But Threnix won't listen. He would rather see everything burn than admit defeat. Then we need to go around him. They worked through the night, contacting officers throughout the fleet, building support for a peaceful surrender. Many agreed. They had seen what human technology could do. They understood that continuing this conflict was suicide. As the deadline approached, a decision had to be made. Would the Dominion bow to the inevitable, or would they choose destruction over submission? In his cell, Hande waited. 8,000 years of sleep, weeks of humiliation, and now everything came down to this moment. Would his people become the monsters they had fled, or would they be something better? For 3 full seconds, the council chamber remained frozen in silence. Then Overlord Threnix began to laugh. The sound started low and grew until it filled the entire room. Soon other council members joined in. The laughter spread through the chamber like a wave. War? Threnix could barely speak through his amusement. You declare war on us? One primitive human against the might of the Kryvax Dominion? The laughter continued. Guards chuckled at their posts. Dignitaries from across the galaxy wiped tears from their eyes. The broadcast carried the mockery to billions of viewers who joined in the joke. Only a few did not laugh. Captain Sung Jin stood at attention near the back of the chamber, his face grim. Yuna Kang watched from the viewing gallery, her heart pounding with fear. Colonel Wu Te, monitoring from his office, felt ice form in his stomach. Day stood calm in the center of the storm of laughter. He waited for it to die down, patient as stone. When the chamber finally quieted, Threnix leaned down until his massive head was level with Day's face. Your species had their chance and failed. They ran away like cowards. And now you stand here alone and powerless, declaring war? This is the best joke I have heard in centuries. I'm not declaring war, Day said quietly. I'm warning you that you already started one. You just don't know it yet. Threnix's amusement faded. Take him away. Prepare him for execution. In 3 days we will dissect this creature and learn everything about human biology. The galaxy will see what happens to those who threaten the Dominion. Guards grabbed Day and dragged him from the chamber. He didn't resist, didn't struggle. As they took him away, his words echoed in the minds of those few who were listening. You should have left me buried. The broadcast ended. Across the Dominion, the consensus was clear. The human had gone insane from the long sleep. His threats were meaningless, the desperate words of a broken mind. Life went on as normal. But 3 days later, something happened that changed everything. Every sensor array in Dominion space detected it simultaneously. A signal, powerful beyond anything they had ever measured, transmitted on every frequency known to science and several that weren't. The signal came from beyond the galactic rim, from the dark void between galaxies where nothing should exist. The message was simple. It repeated in every language the Dominion had ever recorded, including several dead languages from extinct species. Return Hyundai unharmed within 72 hours, or face the consequences. Panic erupted across Dominion space. Scientists scrambled to analyze the signal. The energy required to broadcast across an entire galaxy was enormous. It would take the power output of an entire star just to send such a message. Yet somehow someone had done it. But that wasn't the most frightening part. Hannah Lim, a communications specialist who happened to be of partial human descent like Yuna, made a discovery that terrified her. The signal hadn't traveled through normal space. It had been pre-positioned. Somehow someone had planted transmitters across the entire galaxy, hidden in subspace, waiting for activation. That meant someone had been here. Someone had walked among them, invisible and undetected, planting technology across thousands of worlds. The network had been here for years, maybe centuries, just waiting. They've been watching us, Hannah reported to her superiors. This entire time they've been watching us. Emergency meetings were called. The High Council gathered to discuss the threat. The exploration fleets were recalled immediately. Military forces were put on high alert across Dominion space. Overlord Threnix refused to show fear. This is a bluff. Automated systems left behind by a dead civilization. We will not bow to threats from ghosts. But not everyone agreed. Colonel Wu Te presented his findings about the beacons, the hidden network, the evidence that someone had been systematically observing the Dominion for years. If they wanted to make contact peacefully, they would have done so, Wu Te argued. Instead, they hid. They watched. They prepared. These are not the actions of a dead civilization. These are the actions of someone planning for war. Then let them come, Threnix said. We are ready. Increase patrols along the rim. If anything enters our space, destroy it immediately. In his cell, Day sat calmly. The guards reported that he showed no reaction to the signal, no sign of hope or excitement. He simply waited. Yuna managed to get clearance to visit him. She found him sitting on his bed, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Was that your people? She asked. Day opened his eyes and smiled. Yes. Why now? Why wait until you were sentenced to death? Because they needed to see what kind of civilization the Dominion had become. They needed to see if you were worth saving or needed to be removed. The word sent chills down Yuna's spine. Removed? 8,000 years ago, we left because we were weak. We couldn't compete with species like yours. We couldn't defend ourselves against the empires that wanted to enslave us. So we left to get stronger. The question was always whether we would come back as conquerors or as something better. And what did you decide? Day looked at her for a long moment. That depends on what you do in the next 72 hours. Captain Sung Jin and Yuna met secretly that night. Both had come to the same conclusion. The Dominion's pride would not allow them to surrender to threats. They would execute Day out of spite, and then something terrible would happen. We should help him escape, Yuna suggested. Sung Jin shook his head. Where would he go? We are in the heart of Dominion space. There are millions of soldiers between here and the rim. Even if we got him off-world, they would hunt us down. Then what do? We prepare for war. The 72 hours crawled by. Dominion military forces mobilized. Every warship was brought to battle readiness. Weapons were armed. Shields were raised. If humanity wanted war, the Dominion would show them the might of 12 species united. Nothing happened. The hours passed in tense silence. Sensors showed nothing. No ships appeared. No attacks came. The void beyond the rim remained empty and dark. Some began to relax. Perhaps it had been a bluff after all. Perhaps humans really were extinct, and this was just an automated system playing out pre-programmed responses. Then the deadline passed. 72 hours came and went. Overlord Threnix ordered Day's execution to proceed as scheduled. At first, nothing changed. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then the sensor arrays along the galactic rim went dark. Not destroyed. Not damaged. They simply stopped transmitting. One by one, listening posts and observation stations fell silent. It took 3 hours for anyone to realize what was happening. The stations weren't being attacked. They were vanishing. Ships sent to investigate found nothing but empty space where bases had stood for centuries. Colonel Wu Te studied the reports, his blood running cold. They're not destroying them. They're erasing them, like they were never there. That's impossible, another officer said. You can't just make a space station disappear. Apparently you can if you're human. More reports came in. Scout ships were disappearing. Entire fleets stationed along the rim reported strange sensor readings, then went silent. The Dominion was being blinded systematically and efficiently. In the High Council chamber, fear began to replace arrogance. Species that had felt invincible now faced an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't track, couldn't fight. Pull all forces back to defensive positions, Threnix ordered. Concentrate our fleets around core worlds. Let them come to us. Captain Sung Jin was on the bridge of a cruiser stationed near Vrexus Prime when the sensors picked up something impossible. A gravitational anomaly appeared just outside the capital system. The readings made no sense. Mass was appearing where nothing had existed a moment before. What is that? The captain of the cruiser demanded. The sensor officer checked his instruments twice, then 3 times. Sir, I don't know. The readings are wrong. That object has the mass signature of a small moon, but it's only 2 kilometers long. That's impossible. Show me. The view screen switched to visual. For a moment, there was nothing but the darkness of space. Then something appeared, not moving into view, not emerging from hyperspace. It simply began to exist. The ship was massive and elegant. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating a hole in space where it floated. The design was alien, yet somehow familiar. Organic curves mixed with geometric precision. It looked ancient and futuristic at the same time. One ship, the cruiser captain said, relief in his voice. It's just one ship. Then the ship began broadcasting. The message appeared on every screen, every display, every communication device in the system. The voice was calm, professional, and utterly confident. This is Rear Admiral Yul Choi of the Terran Imperium Expeditionary Fleet. We have come for our lost soldier. Surrender Commander Han Dae unharmed, and you may yet survive this day. The cruiser captain looked at Captain Sung Jin. One ship. They sent one ship against our entire fleet? Sung Jin stared at the view screen, remembering Dae's smile, his certainty, his calm in the face of death. I don't think it's just one ship, Sung Jin said quietly. I think that's just the first one. The announcement came 3 days later. Overlord Threnix had decided to make an example of Commander Han. Dae, the ancient human, would be displayed before the entire Dominion as proof of their superiority. Let all species see what happens to those who do not evolve properly, Threnix declared in his broadcast. Let them see the fate of the weak. They dressed Dae in simple white clothing and paraded him through the streets of Vrexus Prime. Billions watched through holographic displays across thousands of worlds. Crowds of aliens lined the streets, pointing and laughing at the strange creature being led past them. Dae walked with his head high, his face calm. Inside, rage burned like a star, but he showed nothing. Let them laugh. Let them mock. They would learn. At the central plaza, a stage had been erected. Dae was brought before cameras that broadcast his image to every corner of the Dominion. Overlord Threnix stood beside him, his massive form making Dae look tiny by comparison. Behold, Threnix announced, the human. A species so weak they could not survive in our galaxy. Look at this creature. No natural weapons. Skin that tears easily. Eyes that see only a fraction of the spectrum. Ears that hear only limited frequencies. A pathetic, fragile thing. The crowd roared with laughter. Commentators across the Dominion added their own jokes. Children's shows created cartoons mocking human weakness. Scientists published papers explaining why humans were evolutionarily inferior. During all of this, Day stood silent. His eyes scanned the crowd, the buildings, the technology. Every detail was filed away in his mind. Military habits died hard. Yuna Kang watched the broadcast from her lab, feeling sick. This was wrong. She had spent weeks talking to Day, learning about human history and culture. Yes, humans seemed physically weak compared to most species. But there was something else, something in their history that suggested they were far more dangerous than they appeared. She had found references to human wars in the ancient databases. Humans fought each other for thousands of years before reaching space. They perfected warfare in ways that made even the Dominion's military experts uncomfortable. They created weapons that could destroy entire planets. They developed tactics that other species found disturbing, and then they left. All at once, humanity gathered what remained of their people and vanished into the dark between galaxies. Why would a species do that? Why would they abandon the galaxy entirely? Yuna tried to share her concerns with the High Council, but no one listened. They were too busy celebrating their superiority. The mockery continued for days. Day was kept in a transparent cell in the center of the capital, on display like an animal in a zoo. Thousands of aliens came to stare at him every day. Some threw food. Others made rude gestures. Children pressed their faces against the transparent walls and laughed. Day sat quietly, ate when food was provided, and exercised to keep his muscles strong. He showed no emotion, no response to the taunts. This seemed to frustrate his captors, who wanted him to beg or cry or show some sign of breaking. Captain Sung Jin visited the cell regularly. Unlike the crowds, he didn't mock or laugh. He watched Day with the careful eye of a soldier. "You are planning something," Sung Jin said during one visit. Day looked up at him. "No, I'm waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For them to find me." Sung Jin felt that chill again. "Who? There are no more humans." "Your species is gone," Day smiled. "That's what they want you to think." The captain wanted to ask more, but Day closed his eyes and said nothing else. On the 10th day of Day's public display, Overlord Threnix made another announcement. The Dominion had dispatched exploration fleets to search for any remaining human colonies. If any humans had survived in hiding, they would be found and brought into the Dominion. "They will serve us as a worker class," Threnix explained. "It is more mercy than they deserve. Any species descended from such weakness should be grateful for our protection." The broadcast reached every corner of Dominion space. Trillions of beings heard the message and approved. It seemed logical, even kind. What primitive humans might have survived would surely benefit from Dominion guidance. In her lab, Yuna replayed ancient recordings she had found in the deepest archives. One phrase kept appearing in human military documents from before the Exodus. "Don't wake the sleeping giant." The phrase was usually followed by references to historical events where humans had been underestimated and then responded with overwhelming force. The pattern repeated throughout human history. Someone would attack them thinking they were weak. The humans would prove otherwise, often terribly. She brought her findings to Colonel Wu Te, a Dominion intelligence officer who was known for actually listening to evidence. Wu Te studied the documents carefully. Unlike most Dominion officers, he had combat experience from border wars with other empires. He knew that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were the ones who seemed weakest. "This is concerning," Wu Te admitted. "But what can we do? The High Council has made their decision." "We can at least prepare," Yuna said. "We can watch for signs that humanity still exists," Wu Te agreed. He began reviewing reports from the exploration fleets more carefully. What he found made him even more worried. The fleets had discovered something strange in the regions where humans once lived. Ancient beacons still active after 8,000 years. Each beacon transmitted the same message in multiple languages. "You are being watched. Do not pursue." The fleet commanders reported these findings but were ordered to ignore them. Automated warnings from a dead civilization, they were told. Nothing to fear. But Wu Te noticed something the others missed. The beacons weren't just broadcasting. They were also scanning, recording data about every ship that came near them. Someone, somewhere, was collecting information about the Dominion. He tried to warn the High Council. His report was filed and forgotten. On the 15th day, Overlord Threnix decided to give the crowd what they wanted. He would make the human kneel. He would force Day to acknowledge Dominion superiority before the entire galaxy. They brought Day to the council chamber. The room was packed with dignitaries from across the Dominion. Cameras captured every angle. Billions watched. Threnix loomed over Day. Kneel, human. Acknowledge that your species is inferior. Beg for the mercy of the Dominion. Day stood straight, meeting the Overlord's gaze without fear. No, the room went silent. No one defied Overlord Threnix. It simply wasn't done. Kneel, Threnix repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Or I will have you dissected for scientific study. We will learn everything about human biology by taking you apart piece by piece. Something changed in Day's eyes. The calm mask he had worn for weeks cracked. What lay beneath made several council members step back. You want to threaten me? Day's voice was quiet but carried through the silent chamber. You want to make me afraid? Let me tell you something about humans. He stepped forward. Guards moved to stop him, but Threnix waved them back. He wanted to hear what the primitive human had to say. We left this galaxy 8,000 years ago, Day said. Do you know why? Because we were tired of dealing with bullies like you. We were tired of species who thought might made right. So we left. We went to the dark between galaxies where no one could bother us. And died there, Threnix sneered. Day smiled. It was a terrible smile. Is that what you think? You found one sleeping soldier, a relic from before we left, and you assumed we were all gone. You were wrong. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Day's voice rang out clear and strong, filled with 8,000 years of waiting. You want war? We will give you war. The ice cracked under the drilling equipment. Deep beneath the frozen surface of the dead planet, something waited in the darkness. The Kryvax Dominion survey team had been drilling for 3 weeks, searching for mineral deposits. Instead, they found something far more interesting. There's a structure down there, the lead scientist reported. His multiple eyes blinked in excitement as he studied the scanner readouts. It's metal, very old. Not natural. The excavation took another 2 days. When they finally broke through into the underground chamber, what they found made the entire team stop and stare. A pattern sleek and ancient, covered in frost that sparkled under their lights. The metal was unlike anything in their databases. The pod was brought aboard their ship and taken to Vrexus Prime, the capital world of the Dominion. Scientists from 12 different species gathered to study it. After weeks of careful analysis, they discovered the pod's function. It was a stasis chamber, and something was alive inside. The decision was made to open it. Commander Han Day woke up to bright lights and strange faces. His body felt heavy, cold, and wrong. The last thing he remembered was entering the cryopod on Earth, volunteering for a mission that might save what remained of humanity. That felt like yesterday. In reality, 8,000 years had passed. The beings staring at him were not human. One looked like a giant insect with too many legs. Another was covered in scales and had eyes that glowed red. A third seemed to be made of pure energy, shifting and changing shape as it hovered nearby. Subject is conscious, one of them said in a language Day didn't recognize, but somehow he understood it. The words appeared in his mind, translated by technology he couldn't see. Day tried to sit up. His muscles screamed in protest, but he forced himself upright. Years of military training kicked in. Assess the situation, stay calm. Observe everything. Where am I? He asked. His voice came out rough, his throat dry from 8 millennia of sleep. The insectoid being clicked its mandibles together. You are on Vrexus Prime, capital of the Kryvax Dominion. We found you in a stasis pod on a dead world. You have been asleep for a very long time. How long? Approximately 8,000 standard cycles. Your species records are limited. We believe you are human. Is this correct? Day nodded slowly. 8,000 years. Everyone he knew was dead. Earth was where? What had happened to humanity? What is your designation? The energy being asked. Commander Han Day, United Earth Defense Force. He said it with pride, even though that force probably didn't exist anymore. The beings exchanged looks that Day couldn't interpret. Then the Scaled One spoke. We have no records of any human military presence in this galaxy. Your species disappeared from our historical databases millennia ago. Most scholars believe humans went extinct. I'm still here, Day said simply. They took him to a medical facility. Doctors examined him with instruments that hummed and beeped. They seemed amazed that he was still alive, still functional after so long in stasis. Day said little, answering only direct questions. He watched everything, memorizing the layout of the facility, the security procedures, the technology they used. Dr. Yuna Kang was assigned to study him. She was different from the others. She looked almost human, with dark hair and brown eyes, but her skin had a slight gray tint and her fingers were longer than they should be. When she introduced herself, Day noticed the sadness in her eyes. "I am part human," she explained during their first interview. "My ancestors were among the few humans who stayed when the rest left. We integrated into Dominion society over the centuries. I study extinct species. I never thought I would meet a pure human." "Where did they go?" Day asked. "The rest of humanity?" Yuna shook her head. "No one knows. The records from that time are fragmented. There was an event called the Great Exodus. Millions of humans left the galaxy all at once. They went somewhere beyond the rim, into the dark space between galaxies. Most people think they died out there. Nothing can survive in the void." Day smiled slightly but said nothing. The interviews continued for weeks. They asked him about Earth, about human culture, about his military service. Day answered some questions and ignored others. He was careful about what information he revealed. Then came the summons to the High Council. They brought him to a massive chamber filled with aliens of every shape and size. Thousands of beings filled the seats, all staring down at him. At the center sat Overlord Threnix, a being that looked like a cross between a dragon and a mantis. His presence dominated the room. "So this is a human." Threnix's voice boomed across the chamber. "How disappointing." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Day stood silent, his face expressionless. "Look at it," another council member said. "No natural armor. No claws, no venom. Weak bones, fragile skin. How did such a pathetic species ever achieve spaceflight?" More laughter. Dee felt anger building inside him but kept it contained. They didn't know. They couldn't imagine. Threnix leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over Day. "Your species is a footnote in galactic history. A failed experiment in evolution. You are nothing but a curiosity now. A museum piece." "You're wrong," Day said quietly. The chamber fell silent. No one spoke to Overlord Threnix that way. "What did you say?" Threnix's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Day looked up at the massive alien without fear. "I said you're wrong. You don't know anything about humanity. You think we failed? We made a choice. A choice to run away and die in the darkness," Threnix sneered. "Yes, quite heroic," Day smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You'll find out eventually." The council dismissed him as mad, a relic whose mind had been damaged by the long sleep. They sent him back to his cell, a comfortable prison where he could be studied and observed. Captain Sung Jin, the military officer assigned to oversee Dai's confinement, visited him that evening. Unlike the others, Sung Jin had actually fought in wars. He recognized something in Day that the scientists and politicians missed. "You are not afraid," Sung Jin observed. "Everyone else we capture shows fear. But you are calm. Why?" Day looked at the captain for a long moment. "Because I know something you don't." "And what is that?" "That I'm not alone." Sung Jin felt a chill run down his spine. Something in the human's eyes, something ancient and knowing, made him deeply uncomfortable. He filed a report warning that Day might be more dangerous than he appeared. The report was ignored. In his cell, Day lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. 8,000 years. He wondered what humanity had become in all that time. He wondered if they even remembered the soldiers they had left behind, sleeping in pods across the galaxy waiting to be found. He smiled in the darkness. Soon they would all find out. Soon the Dominion would learn what happened when you mocked humanity. Soon, but not yet. For now, Day would wait and watch. Patience was something humans had learned long ago. Outside his cell, the galaxy continued on, unaware that everything was about to change.